I'm Sarah Miller, and my peace was constantly disrupted by my sister-in-law, Chloe's, dramatic money troubles. This reached a breaking point at my daughter's party when her tearful plea for funds, after months of secret financial dealings, suddenly surfaced on my banking app. It was the moment I realized the depth of her ongoing deceit, pushing me to confront the hidden transactions that had bled our family dry. If you've ever felt like you're constantly bailing out a family member, or like your generosity is being exploited, then you know the emotional toll it takes. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear if any of this resonates with you. My life with David, my husband, was a carefully orchestrated symphony of professional ambition and domestic bliss. As an architectural designer, my days were a blur of blueprints, client meetings, and the creative challenge of turning abstract ideas into tangible structures. David, equally driven, commanded the chaotic world of finance, his mind a labyrinth of market trends and investment strategies. Our two children, Lily, our spirited 5-year-old, and Ben, our curious toddler, filled our renovated bungalow with an incessant, joyful hum. We thrived on order, on planning, on the quiet satisfaction of building a life brick by brick, dollar by dollar. Our savings accounts were meticulously managed, our retirement funds growing steadily, and our children's college plans were already sketched out in careful detail. We believed in the power of hard work, the security of foresight, and the simple dignity of earning what you had. Our home was more than just a house. It was a sanctuary, a testament to our shared values and unwavering commitment to a stable future. We often spoke of our dreams for the kids, for leisurely travel in our later years, for the simple peace of mind that financial security could bring. We weren't extravagant, but we were comfortable, and most importantly, we felt a profound sense of control over our own destiny. Then there was Chloe. David's younger sister, Chloe was a vibrant, almost ethereal presence, an aspiring abstract artist whose world seemed to exist on a different plane of existence than ours. She floated through life with an air of delicate sensitivity, perpetually clad in flowing, bohemian fabrics, her hands often adorned with intricate, half-finished clay pieces. David adored her, of course. He was her older brother, her protector, a role he'd embraced since childhood. My in-laws, Eleanor and Robert, David's parents, treated Chloe with a tenderness usually reserved for fragile antiques. Eleanor, especially, saw Chloe as a gifted, misunderstood soul, too delicate for the harsh realities of the world. "She's just so artistic, Sarah," Eleanor would often sigh. "The commercial world just doesn't understand her genius." Robert, a retired accountant, would offer a gruff, pragmatic counterpoint about living within one's means, but his words always seemed to dissipate into the air around Chloe's undeniable charm. It started subtly, innocently enough, years ago when David and I were first dating. Chloe's financial troubles were always small, easily explainable inconveniences. "Oh, Sarah, could you possibly spot me $30 for groceries? My card isn't working at the moment." Or, "David, my phone bill is somehow overdue again. Could you send me 60 so I don't lose service?" These were negligible sums, absorbed without a second thought. We were family, after all. Family helped each other out. We believed in supporting artistic endeavors, in being there for those you loved. We never questioned her, not then. As David and I built our life together, bought our house, got married, and then welcomed Lily and Ben, Chloe's requests grew in frequency and magnitude. The small grocery bills escalated to urgent rent payments. The phone bills spiraled into car repairs or unexpected art supplies she desperately needed for a gallery show that always seemed to be just around the corner. "Sarah, you won't believe it," she'd lament over the phone, her voice thick with manufactured desperation. "My landlord just hit me with a surprise assessment, and I need $500 by Friday or I'll be evicted." Or, to David, "My art collective needs a large contribution now, or they'll cut me out of the next major exhibition. It's 3,000, David. My entire career depends on it." These were no longer negligible sums. These were significant chunks out of our carefully planned budget, requiring discussions, adjustments, sometimes even quiet arguments between David and me. David, torn between his brotherly loyalty and the growing strain on our finances, would usually cave. "She's family, Sarah," he'd always say, his voice tinged with resignation, "and she's just trying to make it as an artist." It's hard, I understood. I truly did. But a persistent, nagging voice in the back of my mind began to whisper, cold and insistent, that something wasn't quite right. Her financial emergencies, her health crises for Chloe had developed a penchant for vague, stress-induced ailments too, seemed to coincide with uncanny precision with our own moments of comfort or achievement. If we talked about a new investment, a successful project at work, or even just our plans for a much-needed weekend getaway, almost immediately, a text or a call from Chloe would arrive, detailing a new, pressing financial catastrophe that required our immediate attention and, of course, our money. It was as if our abundance triggered her scarcity, a delicate balance perpetually thrown off by her urgent needs. This pattern, once barely noticeable, began to etch itself onto my consciousness, a faint but growing disquiet that chipped away at my peace of mind. The subtle requests soon transformed into full-blown demands, arriving with an almost predictable regularity that began to feel less like unfortunate coincidences and more like strategic maneuvers. It was no longer just the occasional, forgotten bill. Now it was Chloe needing several $1,000s for emergency medical procedures that always seemed to lack official documentation, or urgent studio rent that, upon quiet investigation, was always just about due. One particularly jarring instance occurred when David and I were finally about to close on our dream vacation home, a small cabin nestled in the mountains, a place we'd saved for meticulously for years. The excitement was palpable in our household, a quiet hum of anticipation. We discussed every detail, from the rustic decor to the hiking trails we'd explore with the kids. 2 days before the closing, Chloe called David, her voice a desperate sob. "David, I just got evicted. My landlord changed his mind, and I have nowhere to go. They want first last and a security deposit on a new place, and I have absolutely nothing." She painted a vivid picture of homelessness, tears streaming, her voice cracking with apparent despair. David, ever the protector, immediately started to panic. "Sarah, we have to help her. She's literally going to be on the street." The sum she needed was substantial, nearly $10,000, enough to seriously impact our cabin down payment. I remember the knot tightening in my stomach. I looked at David, his face etched with worry for his sister, and felt a wave of resentment wash over me. "David," I said gently, trying to keep my voice even, "this is a lot. And it's always something right when we're about to do something significant for ourselves." He bristled. "Are you saying she's making it up, Sarah? She's your sister-in-law. She's family." The argument that followed was one of the most painful we'd had, not because of the money itself, but because it exposed a chasm in our perceptions of Chloe. I believed her pain was real, but I also felt a deep unease about the timing of her crises. David, blinded by his loyalty, simply saw a sister in need. Ultimately, we loaned her the money, a loan we both knew, deep down, would never be repaid. The cabin closing went through, but the joy was muted, tinged with the bitterness of that large, unbudgeted sum. The incident left a lingering chill between David and me, a silent tension that suggested an unresolved conflict. Our in-laws, Eleanor and Robert, played a significant, if unwitting, role in enabling Chloe's behavior. Eleanor, especially, was a constant advocate for her delicate daughter. "Chloe's just so sensitive, Sarah," she'd often say, her brow furrowed with concern. "The world is so harsh for an artist like her. She just needs a little support." She'd recount tales of Chloe's struggles in the art world, painting her as a struggling martyr to her craft. Robert, David's father, was more pragmatic, a retired accountant who believed in fiscal responsibility. He'd occasionally voice skepticism, grumbling about throwing good money after bad. But his resistance was always easily overcome by Eleanor's emotional appeals or Chloe's tearful performances. He'd give in, writing a check with a sigh, reinforcing Chloe's belief that a convincing enough sob story would always yield results. This parental dynamic created a perfect storm for Chloe, a mother who enabled her emotional manipulation and a father who, despite his principles, ultimately capitulated. This pattern extended beyond just money. Chloe's fibromyalgia flare-ups and migraines seemed to intensify dramatically whenever she wasn't the center of attention. I remember David's graduation from business school. He'd worked tirelessly for years, juggling a full-time job with night classes, and this was his big day. We had planned a small, intimate dinner with just our immediate families. Just as David was about to deliver a heartfelt thank you speech, Chloe gasped, clutching her head and swaying, announcing a sudden, debilitating migraine. The entire focus of the room immediately shifted to her. My mother-in-law rushed to her side, offering cool compresses and hushed words of comfort. David, ever the concerned brother, paused his speech to ensure she was okay. The moment was effectively stolen, the joy diluted by the familiar cloud of Chloe's perceived suffering. It wasn't that I didn't believe she felt pain. It was the timing that gnawed at me, the uncanny way her crises always seemed to eclipse everyone else's spotlight. My internal whispers of doubt grew louder, transforming into a cacophony of questions. Was this deliberate? Was it unconscious? Or was I just a cynical, jealous sister-in-law? These questions haunted my quiet moments, creating a growing distance between me and David, who remained steadfast in his belief that Chloe was simply a victim of her own delicate health and unfortunate circumstances. The weight of these unanswered questions, coupled with the drain on our emotional and financial resources, began to feel unbearable. The pattern, once a subtle undercurrent, had now become a glaring, undeniable truth, its repetition a painful echo through every significant moment of my life with David. It was as if Chloe possessed an innate, uncanny ability to detect any burgeoning sense of peace or accomplishment we cultivated, only to swoop in and shatter it with her latest, most urgent crisis. Each milestone David and I reached, whether personal or professional, became another opportunity for Chloe to reassert her gravitational pull on our attention and resources. When David received a prestigious promotion at his finance firm, a culmination of years of relentless effort and late nights, we planned a celebratory weekend getaway. We envisioned quiet dinners, long walks on the beach, and the sheer joy of uninterrupted time together. The day before we were set to leave, Chloe called, her voice trembling with an urgent new narrative. My landlord just locked me out. They said I missed a payment, but I know I sent it. I need money for a hotel room and a lawyer, David, or I'll be homeless. David, his face a mask of worry, immediately started making calls, canceling our reservations, diverting the fun money we'd allocated for our trip to yet another of Chloe's perceived emergencies. The promotion celebration, a moment meant for us, evaporated into a stressful scramble to manage Chloe's fabricated chaos. The resentment, a slow-burning ember within me, began to flare into a quiet, simmering fire. It wasn't just the money, though that was a considerable drain on our meticulously planned finances. It was the emotional toll, the constant state of low-level anxiety that permeated our lives. Every time my phone rang and I saw Chloe's name, my heart would clench, bracing for the next manufactured calamity. It felt like she was a black hole, constantly sucking in our energy, our joy, our attention. David, bless him, remained steadfast in his devotion to his sister, even as the mounting evidence of her manipulative behavior became harder to ignore. He'd justify her actions with increasingly flimsy excuses. She's just overwhelmed, or artistic types are always a bit chaotic. But I could see the lines of stress deepening around his eyes, the way he'd sigh heavily before answering her calls. He was caught between his innate loyalty and the growing realization that something was deeply amiss. My in-laws continued to reinforce this dynamic, particularly Alina, who would coo over Chloe's latest woes, reinforcing the idea that Chloe was a delicate flower in need of constant financial and emotional sustenance. "Oh, poor Chloe," Alina would lament. "She just can't seem to catch a break. It's so hard for her to manage without a stable income. Robert, David's father, despite his fiscally conservative nature, would rarely intervene, worn down by years of Alina's emotional pleas and Chloe's dramatic performances. He'd just hand over the checks, a defeated look in his eyes, perpetuating the cycle. The birth of our second child, Ben, was meant to be a time of unadulterated joy, a period of quiet bonding and adjustment. Instead, it became another platform for Chloe's self-centered drama. Just as I was recovering from a challenging delivery, barely able to move, Chloe called David, weeping uncontrollably. My gallery space got flooded. All my new pieces are ruined. I need thousands for repairs and new supplies, or I'm finished, David, absolutely finished. The timing was so egregious, so utterly devoid of consideration for my fragile state, that it snapped something inside me. I looked at David, holding our newborn son, his face a mixture of elation and immediate, crushing concern for his sister. "David," I whispered, my voice hoarse from exhaustion, "this is insane. Can't she wait? Can't anything just be about us for 5 minutes?" He just shook his head, already dialing Chloe back, trying to soothe her. The incident left a deep, festering wound in my heart, a profound sense of disillusionment about the nature of family, and about Chloe's complete lack of empathy. This pervasive pattern of her crises shadowing our triumphs wasn't just about financial drain, it was about emotional theft. Every time she manufactured a crisis, she stole a piece of our joy, our peace, our ability to fully revel in our own hard-earned moments. It felt like walking on eggshells, constantly anticipating the next dramatic call, the next tearful plea. I started to notice how even casual conversations about our life would trigger her. If I mentioned a new client project, she'd suddenly have a crisis of confidence about her own art career. If David talked about a bonus, she'd have an unexpected medical emergency. It was a subtle, insidious form of emotional and financial abuse, meticulously woven into the fabric of our family dynamics. I began to keep a quiet, mental tally of these incidents, seeing the chilling precision with which her emergencies aligned with our successes. The thought that she might be doing this consciously was too painful to consider, so I clung to the idea that it was unconscious, a deeply ingrained coping mechanism. But the pain it inflicted on David and me, and on our family as a whole, was undeniable. The simmering resentment was now a roaring blaze within me, pushing me towards a breaking point. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the next time I wouldn't just sit back and let her hijack our lives. The air in our backyard was a symphony of delighted shrieks and childish laughter. It was Lily's 5th birthday, and after months of planning, her unicorn-themed party was in full swing. Balloons bobbed like colorful dreams against the clear blue sky, streamers cascaded from the patio awning, and the scent of freshly popped popcorn mingled with the sweet aroma of Lily's rainbow cake. David, ever the doting father, was expertly grilling hot dogs, while I flitted between clusters of parents, ensuring everyone had a drink and a comfortable spot. Lily, in a sparkly unicorn dress, was the picture of pure joy. Her face smeared with cake frosting as she chased her friends around the bouncy castle we'd rented. This day, I thought, looking at her radiant smile, this is what it's all about. This was a moment of unadulterated family happiness, a milestone we had fiercely protected from any potential external disruptions. We had been especially vigilant with Chloe in the weeks leading up to the party, hoping to create a buffer against her usual dramatics. Just as I was about to gather the children for the highly anticipated cake-cutting ceremony, the gate creaked open, and Chloe entered, clinging dramatically to the arm of her latest boyfriend, Leo, a perpetually bewildered-looking man who seemed to exist in a state of mild confusion. Her usual vibrant clothes were replaced by a somber, flowing gray dress, and her face was pale, almost translucent. Her entrance, though quiet, felt like a sudden drop in temperature, a subtle shift in the jubilant atmosphere. Alina and Robert, my in-laws, immediately rushed to her side, their faces creased with concern. "Chloe, darling, are you all right? You look so pale," Alina exclaimed, her voice laced with the familiar maternal worry. Chloe offered a weak smile, barely perceptible, and whispered, I'm so sorry, I almost didn't make it. I had the most terrible night. My entire art collection, the one I've been working on for years, it was completely lost in a bizarre shipping accident. Everything, I don't know what I'm going to do. Her voice broke on the last word, and she dissolved into quiet, seemingly uncontrollable sobs, clutching Leo's arm for support. The children, momentarily distracted from their play, stared wide-eyed at the weeping adult. The immediate reaction was predictable. David rushed over, his face instantly clouded with concern, leaving the perfectly grilled hot dogs to char on the barbecue. Eleanor and Robert enveloped Chloe in a tight embrace, murmuring comforting words, their eyes darting nervously towards the other guests, who were now exchanging uneasy glances. The vibrant energy of the party began to dissipate, replaced by a palpable tension. Parents started to gather their children, sensing the abrupt shift in mood. Lily, sensing the change, looked up at me, her smile faltering, a worried frown creasing her brow. This was it, I thought, a cold wave of realization washing over me. This was the moment. The meticulous planning, the joyful anticipation, the sheer effort to create a perfect day for our daughter, it was all being hijacked, yet again, by Chloe's self-serving drama. The anger that had simmered within me for so long finally erupted, not in a loud outburst, but in a quiet, simmering rage that felt like molten lead in my veins. I looked at Chloe, her head buried in Eleanor's shoulder, her sobs still soft but undeniably effective at drawing every eye, and a chilling thought solidified in my mind. I knew it. I knew she would do this. I walked towards the group, my steps deliberate, my gaze fixed on Chloe. As I approached, she lifted her head, her eyes red-rimmed but quickly meeting mine, a flicker of something undefinable, perhaps defiance, perhaps a challenge passing between us. Eleanor shot me a warning glance, as if to say, "Don't you dare." But I had reached my limit. My daughter's special day was being stolen, and I wasn't going to stand by and watch it happen anymore. "Chloe," I said, my voice cutting through the hushed murmurs, "are you truly saying all your art, years of work just vanished, all of it?" My tone was calm, almost dangerously so. Chloe stiffened, her sobs abruptly ceasing. "Yes, Sarah, every last piece. It's gone, I'm ruined," she wailed, her voice rising in pitch. It was at that precise moment, as she uttered the word ruined, that my phone, clutched in my hand, buzzed with an urgent notification. I glanced down. It was a push notification from my banking app. A new transaction had just posted. A substantial one. A digital transfer into Chloe's account. My eyes widened, a shock of recognition electrifying me. The amount was significant, far more than anyone would casually spot her. It was a direct contradiction to her claims of utter destitution. This wasn't a small favor. This was a large-scale, calculated influx of funds, appearing at the exact moment she was begging for more. The irony, the audacity, the sheer theatricality of it almost made me laugh. This wasn't just a crisis. It was a performance, designed to extract maximum sympathy and, undoubtedly, maximum financial gain. The digital transfer, a silent, glowing testament on my screen, was the undeniable proof I had been craving, the cold, hard fact that shattered the illusion she so meticulously crafted around herself. My suspicions, long whispered in the darkest corners of my mind, were now glaringly, brightly, undeniably true. The buzzing of my phone, the glowing notification on the screen, felt like a literal jolt of electricity, cutting through the dense, emotionally charged atmosphere of Lily's birthday party. The sight of that substantial digital transfer into Chloe's account, time-stamped just moments before her dramatic breakdown, hit me with a force that stole my breath. It wasn't a small, innocent deposit. It was a sum that contradicted every tearful claim of destitution she had just made. My mind reeled. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was cold, hard proof. My eyes darted from the screen to Chloe's seemingly distraught face, buried in Eleanor's shoulder, then back to the glowing numbers. The juxtaposition was sickening. My heart hammered against my ribs, a chaotic drumbeat of anger and a strange, morbid satisfaction. I knew it. A voice screamed inside my head. I always knew it. David, noticing my sudden stillness and the intense focus on my phone, leaned in, his brow furrowed with concern. "Sarah, what's wrong?" he whispered, his voice laced with the usual worry he reserved for Chloe's manufactured emergencies. I didn't answer immediately. My fingers, trembling slightly, navigated through my banking app, pulling up the transaction details. It wasn't a deposit from our joint account, which ruled out a clumsy mistake on David's part. It wasn't from Alina or Robert, whose transfers always had clear descriptors. This was an incoming transfer from a source I didn't recognize, a name that seemed vaguely corporate, yet unfamiliar. The description was generic, something like service fee payment, utterly bland and unrevealing, yet the sheer size of the amount screamed something significant. The details confirmed it. A large, undisclosed sum, appearing in Chloe's account precisely when she was staging her most elaborate display of financial ruin. The timing wasn't just uncanny, it was incriminating. My initial shock gave way to a cold, analytical resolve. I subtly tucked my phone away, not wanting to make a scene just yet, but the information burned within me, a fiery truth demanding to be unleashed. The rest of Lily's party passed in a blur of forced smiles and strained conversations. Chloe remained the unwilling, or perhaps very willing, center of attention, her distress casting a dark cloud over what was meant to be a joyous occasion. David, torn between his concern for his sister and his obligations as a host, looked utterly miserable. As soon as the last guest had left and the children were finally asleep, tucked into their beds, I turned to David, the weight of the day's revelations heavy on my chest. He was slumped on the sofa, rubbing his temples. "What a day," he sighed. "Poor Chloe. I don't know how she's going to get through this." I sat beside him, taking his hand. "David," I said, my voice steady, "I need to show you something. Something important." I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app, showing him the transaction. His eyes widened as he saw the amount, then narrowed in confusion. "What? What is this? Where did this come from?" he muttered, a flicker of suspicion finally entering his voice. "I don't know," I admitted, but it appeared exactly when Chloe was crying about losing everything. It directly contradicts her story, doesn't it? He stared at the screen, then back at me, a dawning realization slowly spreading across his face. The blind loyalty that had so long shielded his eyes from Chloe's manipulations finally began to crack. But she said she was ruined, she was sobbing, she looked so genuinely distressed. He stammered, his voice laced with confusion and a hint of rising anger. "I know," I said softly, "but this is real David. This is undeniable. Someone or something is putting a lot of money into her account, and she's not telling us about it, while she's asking us to bail her out." The conversation that followed was long, difficult, and punctuated by David's bursts of disbelief and anger, slowly morphing into a bitter sense of betrayal. He pulled up his own banking app, checking joint accounts, but found nothing. We went through old texts, old emails, looking for any clue, any mention of this mysterious income. Nothing. It was meticulously hidden. "Who is this XYZ Holdings?" David fumed, pointing at the generic sender name on the transfer. "It looks like a shell company. This makes no sense." The more we dug, the more questions arose, and the more undeniable Chloe's deception became. David, initially hesitant to believe the worst of his sister, was now forced to confront the stark reality. The image of his fragile, struggling artist sister began to crumble, replaced by a much darker, more manipulative figure. The feeling of being constantly drained, financially and emotionally, now had a name: deliberate exploitation. This digital clue, this single, damning transaction, was the thread that would unravel the entire intricate tapestry of Chloe's lies. Armed with the undeniable evidence of the mysterious digital transfer, and a growing stack of other subtle inconsistencies we'd uncovered through careful cross-referencing of old texts and David's forgotten payment records, the decision to confront Chloe became a non-negotiable imperative. It was no longer about suspicions, It was about irrefutable facts. David, still reeling from the shock of realizing his sister's long-standing deception, was now resolute. "She needs to explain this, Sarah," he stated, his voice tight with a mixture of anger and profound hurt. "And if she can't, then we're done. No more bailouts, no more excuses." We decided to invite Chloe over for a family dinner, a seemingly innocuous gathering that would, in reality, be a carefully orchestrated intervention. We also extended the invitation to Alina and Robert, knowing their presence was crucial, not only because they were also victims of Chloe's manipulations, but because their enabling had contributed to the very situation we now faced. The tension leading up to that dinner was almost unbearable, a silent, suffocating weight in our home. Chloe arrived, fashionably late as always, accompanied by Leo, her placid boyfriend. She was dressed in her usual artistic attire, seemingly oblivious to the palpable unease that hung in the air. Alina and Robert arrived shortly after, their usual cheerfulness muted, sensing the underlying tension. We made small talk during dinner, a strained performance of normalcy. The food, usually a source of comfort, felt like ash in my mouth. My heart pounded a relentless rhythm against my ribs, anticipating the inevitable clash. After the plates were cleared and Ben and Lily were tucked away in bed, David cleared his throat, the sound unusually loud in the quiet living room. "Chloe," he began, his voice surprisingly steady, though I could see the slight tremor in his hand as he gestured for her to sit opposite us. "We need to talk about something serious, something that's been bothering us for a long time." Chloe's expression immediately hardened, a flicker of wariness entering her eyes. She glanced at Alina, who gave her a reassuring, almost protective nod. "Oh, David, what is it?" she asked, her voice light, laced with an air of practiced innocence. "Is this about money again? Because I already told you the art market is tough and my shipping incident—" David held up a hand, cutting her off. "This isn't about the shipping incident, Chloe. This is about all the incidents, all the times you've come to us, crying poverty, needing money for emergencies that never quite added up." Chloe scoffed, her face beginning to flush. "What are you implying? That I'm lying? That your own sister is a liar?" Her voice rose, taking on a familiar defensive edge. Alina immediately jumped in. "Now, David, don't accuse your sister. You know how sensitive she is about her struggles. She's an artist, she lives on the edge." Robert, surprisingly, remained silent, his gaze fixed on Chloe, a questioning look in his eyes. "We have proof, Chloe," I interjected, my voice calm, cutting through the rising tide of her manufactured indignation. I pulled out my phone, displaying the banking app with the digital transfer clearly visible. "This transfer, Chloe, a substantial sum from a company called XYZ Holdings, deposited into your account. The same day you stood in my backyard, weeping about losing everything. Explain this." The air in the room thickened, suddenly heavy with unspoken accusation. Chloe's eyes widened, first in shock, then in what looked like genuine panic. Her pale complexion flushed a deep crimson. What is that? I've never seen that before. It must be a mistake." "A hack," she stammered, her voice high and reedy, her composure finally shattering. "Don't lie to us, Chloe," David said, his voice low and dangerous. "We've been through enough with your emergencies. We gave you thousands of dollars, money we saved for our children's future, because you claimed you were on the streets. And all this time you had this. What is XYZ Holdings, Chloe? What exactly are you doing?" Chloe erupted then, a hurricane of denial and accusation. "How dare you? You're going through my private accounts. This is an invasion of privacy. You're just jealous, Sarah. Jealous of my art, jealous of my freedom. You've always hated me, haven't you? You always wanted to turn David against me." She turned on Alina, tears streaming down her face again, but this time they felt less like genuine sorrow and more like a weapon. "Mom, tell them I wouldn't do this. They're trying to ruin me." Alina, torn between her daughter's histrionics and the undeniable evidence on my phone, looked distraught. "Chloe, what is this, dear?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Robert finally spoke, his voice unusually firm. "Chloe, we need an explanation. Now, this looks very bad." The confrontation had descended into chaotic emotional warfare, but one thing was clear. Chloe's carefully constructed facade of vulnerability had been irrevocably shattered. The truth, ugly and painful, was finally out in the open. The aftermath of our discoveries was a turbulent period for our family, akin to navigating a ship through a violent storm. The truth about Chloe, once a closely guarded secret, exploded like a bomb, sending shockwaves through every relationship. Eleanor, initially in staunch denial, refused to believe that her delicate daughter could be capable of such calculated deceit. She clung to her narrative of Chloe as a struggling artist, a victim of circumstance, even as David patiently laid out the irrefutable evidence. The bank statements, the shell company documents, the complaints from other victims. Their living room became a battleground of wills, David's calm, factual presentation against Eleanor's tearful accusations of me being a meddling outsider who had poisoned her son against her daughter. Robert, however, after reviewing David's meticulous file, slowly and silently accepted the grim reality. The look on his face, a mixture of profound disappointment and sorrow, was heartbreaking. He was a man who valued integrity above all else, and his daughter had systematically dismantled that core family value. Chloe, once confronted with the overwhelming evidence, retreated into a cocoon of self-pity and victimhood. She sent furious, rambling texts, accusing us of slander and attempting to ruin her life. She cut off all communication with us and eventually, even with her parents, who, despite their initial defense of her, couldn't ignore the mounting legal inquiries and the undeniable evidence of her fraud. The XYZ Holdings scheme finally collapsed, publicly and spectacularly. News articles began to appear, detailing the large-scale financial scam without directly naming Chloe, but clearly outlining the methods she had employed. The online financial blogger David and I had followed continued to expose details, and some of her former investors bravely came forward, filing official complaints. While we never sought direct revenge, the karmic consequences of her actions were swift and severe. Her reputation as an artist, built on the back of her fabricated persona, was shattered. Her dwindling circle of friends dissolved as the truth about her manipulative nature became widely known. She faced mounting legal battles, not from us, but from the victims of her pyramid scheme. We heard, through distant family whispers, that she had lost everything: her apartment, her car, and the lavish lifestyle she had maintained through fraud. She was left with nothing but the consequences of her own lies. For David and me, the process of rebuilding our family was slow, arduous, and often painful. We had to establish strict, unyielding boundaries, not just with Chloe, but with Eleanor. Eleanor eventually came around, a shell of her former self, humbled by the depth of Chloe's deceit. She apologized to us, tears in her eyes, for her blind spot and her enabling. Robert, ever the quiet observer, became a surprising source of support, offering us quiet wisdom and acknowledging the strength it took to confront such a painful truth. Our relationship with them, though forever changed, began to heal, rooted in a new, raw honesty. The trust, once so fragile, was slowly, painstakingly restored. The children, thankfully, remained largely shielded from the worst of the fallout. We explained Chloe's absence vaguely, focusing on the importance of honesty and integrity in our own home. Lily and Ben continued to thrive, unaware of the tumultuous storm that had raged around them. For me, the experience, though devastating, was ultimately transformative. It taught me the profound importance of setting boundaries, not just for my financial well-being, but for my emotional and mental health. It solidified my conviction that true peace comes not from avoiding conflict, but from confronting uncomfortable truths, even when they involve the people you love. The financial drain Chloe had inflicted upon us had ended, but the deeper healing was in reclaiming our emotional sovereignty, in refusing to be manipulated any longer. We learned that protecting our peace and our principles was not selfish. It was a necessary act of self-preservation, a testament to the values we wanted to instill in our children. Our family dinners are now quiet, harmonious affairs, free from the lurking shadow of impending drama. When Chloe's name comes up, it's with a mix of sadness and regret, but no longer with the crushing weight of obligation or anger. We have moved on, scarred but stronger. The quiet hum of our secure banking app, once a source of dread due to Chloe's intrusions, now simply represents the steady foundation we have built, unburdened by deceit. It's a powerful reminder that while family bonds can be complex and sometimes broken, the most authentic connections are built on truth, not manipulation. Have you ever experienced a similar situation where a family member's actions profoundly impacted your sense of peace or financial well-being? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story touched something in you, make sure to subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is speak our truth, even when it's difficult. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember that true success is found in the courage to break dysfunctional patterns, to speak truth even when uncomfortable, and to rebuild relationships on more authentic foundations.